why is this relevant? Well, there's a few things. Onias III, is he the Messiah? What a strange title. What's the topic here? So I'm going to be debating Judah, who's Tanakh only, and he's not going to believe that Isaiah 53 and Isaiah 52 are about Jesus as Messiah. And we'll discuss it when it comes to it. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I think we're going to have a respectful but lively Bible discussion, basically. Bible study in public, basically, you know? Well, here's the thing. Judah does have a position, we've talked a little bit about it before, where he believes that a man named Onias III is the Messiah. And so I said, well, I know the debate's not about Onias III tomorrow, but maybe we could talk a little bit about Onias III tonight so people have better background information. By the way, shout out to Doki Doki Bible Club for all the channel members. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for the channel memberships you drop on people. I know people appreciate that. Guys, let me know, how long do those channel memberships last when they happen here? I'm not actually sure. So here's the thing. I want to show you guys something. I'm going to share my screen. I have written an article on this. I have written an article on this at the Shield Squad blog here. I'm going to show it to you. Just give me a second. And I'm going to go through some of it. I'm going to show some of it to you on your screen while we're talking. And I'm going to add some commentary. And, oh, wrong show. I got the last show. I'm going to add some commentary to it as we go along. And if you're like, I don't care about this, I don't think he's, well, here's the thing. It is important and interesting to know for a few reasons about Onias III, because he's a real person and the information about him takes place in between the testaments. And hey, we know that, you know, we may not always be as strong on information in between the testaments. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's helpful for us to get more information about things that took place in between the testaments. And so I want to talk about that. Let me flip this around here a little bit. I think it's probably better if I'm like this, and this is down here. And I don't know, maybe that's not the best way, but that kind of makes sense, at least in my mind, about how to have this laid out. Shout out to the super chat by Ham Sunshine. Thank you very much. You're going to get this. And that is a good song you're talking about. All right. So I ask you to subscribe to the blog, the Shield blog. You can actually be a paid supporter, but you can also do it for free. So it's not required to get the articles. Last year, I tried to do one a week. Got a little tricky. And so it kind of petered out at the end, or should I say I petered out at the end. And this year, I'm trying to think maybe a little bit more like something like once a month. I think that's more of a realistic schedule for your boy, and that's what I'm working on here, okay? So these are my notes, in essence, on this blog post. Let's go through it and talk about it, okay? And I think you guys will learn a lot when we do this. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight, okay? And I do appreciate all the support. Oh, wait. We should do the dog, shouldn't we? Okay, hold on. I know what you guys want. Just give me a second. Just 1 second here. Where'd the thing go? You know, I can't. Oh, there it is. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're going to do the thing, meaning I'm going to bring the dog so she can get her treat, okay? Since we did get a super chat. Hi, Adrian. Okay, you guys ready here for the dog to get her love? She's ready. Look at her. You can tell. Hi, Adrian. She's taking up way too much real estate on my screen. But since we gave a super chat, and she is here with us tonight, Adrian, super chat equals a super snack. There you go. All right, she's excited about that. All right, so here we go. Who was Onias III? He's a somewhat obscure high priest from the time when Judea was controlled by the Ptolemaic and Seleucid Kingdoms. This gets into the situation after Alexander the Great, which we're going to talk about a little bit here tonight. Onias III has somehow become a magnet for all kinds of oddball theories about him. With all due respect, I do include the idea that he was the Messiah to be sort of an oddball theory about him. But that's not the only one, believe it or not. There's a number of oddball theories about this person. Very fascinating. There's the thumbnail, and I'm going to say something real quick here. This picture you will commonly see used a lot of times as a depiction of Onias III. My understanding is this is, I think, a 15th century depiction of a Sadducee, and a lot of times gets used. This is not, my understanding, a depiction of Onias III, but it's commonly used sort of as a stand-in in some of the literature and whatnot, and some of the images and blog posts and stuff. But really, it's a depiction of a generic 15th century Sadducee, is my general understanding. Now, with that, let's go. Or should I say, let's go. Are y'all ready? If you are, give a thumbs up. Be sure to like and subscribe this video. Take a drink of water. Let's get some information under our belt on a beautiful Friday night. Share this link. Come through. We're going to have fun, okay? I really believe we are, ultimately. That's what I hope. And I'm glad Judah's here to be able to be with us. I think that's a cool feature, We're not anti. We're pro. We're pro-dialogue, over here. Street Apologist. Haircut makes you talk different, Okay. Onias III was the grandson of Onias II and the son and successor of Simon II, and the high priest from 190 to 172 BC. So you see, almost 200 years before Christ, he was the high priest in Judea. There are people online and in the academy who claim all kinds of wild things about this somewhat obscure but significant historical figure. For example, you can find articles making a case that Onias III was the teacher of righteousness of the Qumran community. To those who don't know, Qumran community are the folks responsible for the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were the ones who held them, protected them, copied some, created the sectarian documents, which are the non-biblical literature that they had as well. And there's a person sometimes called the TR in the literature, sometimes TOR, teacher of righteousness. His identity is a mystery. That is not a certain thing. There's some people who make it a case that it's Onias III, and I have a link to it in the parentheses. See that? So you can look at it and see it, So I'm just telling you different sides of the story here. There are also articles arguing that some of Daniel's prophecies refer to him. And this is in the academy. So once you actually start getting into this discussion and looking more at it, what's interesting is a lot of commentaries mention Onias III in relationship to prophecies in the book of Daniel. And it's funny because if you haven't heard about him, and then you're reading a commentary on Daniel, especially the period where it's discussing the 70 weeks and all of that, and you'll see the commentary say either this, some people say this is Onias III, or I think this is Onias III, or this must be Onias III. You're like, wait, who's Onias III? But it's actually pretty prominent in a lot of the commentaries. And it runs the gamut. It's not just sort of a conservative or liberal divide, meaning you can find people from kind of different spectrums who say, I think some of the prophecies in Daniel 9 and Daniel 11 relate to this person, Onias III. It's a fascinating thing, And so I just want to let people know that he does exist. He is there, and there are people who talk about him. Or even YouTube channels where the hosts claim Onias III was the real Messiah. And you guys know who I'm talking about here, right? My friend, it's in the article, my friend and sometimes debate opponent, Judah Natsara. And if you click on this link, it goes to our upcoming debate. So I mention you in the article, Judah. The truth is a lot less sensational than any of those. So let's find out just who was Onias III. And every time you see purple in one of my articles at theshieldSquad.com, this is the most recent one I dropped last night, the purple are links, okay? So this takes you to the Wikipedia link. But you always want to come back to the link, So this is something different. This is saying it is supposed to be a rendition of Onias III. Oh, so wait, are these inverted? So I'm getting some different information. I'm going to look more into this. It's funny, I just happened to click on this. I know it's small, you can't see. This is saying this is a depiction of Onias III, and it is a 15th century one, but I've read another source that says it's just a generic picture of a Sadducee. But are they two different people? I've got to look into this. Oh, those are two different people. Okay, so I'm learning as I go. Okay, I see the differences here. It's like one of these things is not like the other. So anyways, listen real quick. some of the images you'll see for Onias III, these are just depictions from the medieval era, okay? Some of them are of a Sadducee who's sometimes used, and it's actually a pretty similar picture now that I'm looking at them both. Other ones are actually said to be Onias III, okay? So here's the Sadducee one. This is a picture. So we're getting into stuff so you can know the truth in this stuff, okay? So this is also from the 15th century, and you can see from the top, even though, you're not reading the language, that this is supposed to be a depiction of a Sadducee. It's supposed to be a depiction of a Sadducee. And sometimes you'll see that for Onias III, like as a stand-in, basically. And in fact, I believe that's what I have in mind, and he's kind of in my thumbnail. But if I wanted to change it to make it the other character, maybe I should, as I think through this, because it's somewhat different. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about when I click on the Wikipedia article. So that's the Sadducee character. But as you look at the Wikipedia article, this is a different character. See that? Hold on, I'm going to show it to you in a second. Yeah, there you go. So that's supposed to be a depiction of Onias III. So similar but different. Okay, so I'm getting it down. I'm seeing it. Okay. Anyways, that's not really the most important thing. I just want to know the truth. Okay, so as we go through this, right, we're going to find out who he is as best we can. And yes, there is a link to the debate that is tomorrow. So you want to copy this link right here. Want to mark it down. Can someone drop the debate link for tomorrow? And yes, hey, you know what? Shout out to the Torah Knights. Torah Knights, I do hope we can have a cordial discussion at the end of this. If you guys want to, I'll even let more than one of you on. So, much love to the Torah Knights. We have our differences, but it doesn't mean it's disrespect. Differences don't have to be disrespect. And I'm okay with a little rough and tumble. I'm not from the suburbs. I'm okay with, a little bit of tossing around and stuff. I'm okay with that too. But I'm just saying, ultimately, things can be done like in what you might call good faith, even if there's a little bit of, trash talk's not illegal, but there's levels, right? There's levels, All right. So let's talk about the political background. Thank you, Jude. I'm gonna link that right now. I'm gonna pin that rather. Let me just pin that real quick. You're gonna see me come on here. That's a video I'm going to play later. See this video right here? I'm going to play it. I hate all these stupid ads they show now. Right here. Let me drop it. Okay. So the debate link is now pinned at the top, replacing my stupid message about me being late. Okay. So back to this. Bada boom, bada bing. Here we go. So here's the political background to understand some of this. After the death of Alexander the Great, his empire was divided into different empires. It's usually said to be 3 is my general understanding, all right, because I'm learning all the time. And this is around 323, all right? These are known as the empires of the Diadochi, all right? And here they are. The Antagonids ruled Macedonia and Greece. The Ptolemies ruled over Egypt and the Levant coast. And the Seleucids ruled over Syria, Mesopotamia, and Iran. All right, so Alexander the Great could hold it together, but after his passing, as this often happens, it gets divvied up. And of course, over time, they become rivals and start fighting each other. This is kind of common, right? So let's take a look. Judea, that's what I'm calling it throughout this article. A few times you might see me say Israel, but I think it's more accurate at this time to call it Judea. Judea was initially part of the Ptolemaic Empire, but was also within the sphere of the political influence of the Seleucid part of Syria. So they're sort of in the middle border in a way, all right? Greek-based Hellenistic populations built cities on the coast, and I guess I should probably change the article to explain what I mean by coast, because I don't say the coast of where. That's my bad. The coast of Judea, though. Hopefully the context makes it clear. And over time, there was 10 of these, known as the Decapolis. And one of the big ones I know about is Sephora, which is somewhat close to Nazareth, where Jesus grew up. And it was a shipbuilding town. And so it's possible that Jesus may have even been involved as a tecton, because that's really what it is, not just merely a carpenter. He may have been involved with building ships. It is possible because of Sephora, sometimes pronounced Sephora. You'll see different things like that. Anyway, so you have these Greek cities in the midst of Judea, all right? And from there, these cities, Hellenistic culture spread out into the larger Jewish population. So this is part of the process of Hellenization in a way. This is kind of the subtle version, although it's clear what they were doing, but it's just establishing their article. Jimmy Berman, the article is just theshieldSquad.com, and it's the most recent article. This is my article. Hold on just a second. Yo, that's loud. Okay, I got you. My son likes to listen to Christian hip hop, which I'm glad of, but sometimes it's too loud, and it shows up on this microphone in my headphones really bad. But anyways, all right. Much of the Jewish upper class at this time, so this is in between the Testaments, understand, including the aristocratic priests, were pro-Hellenist. So a lot of the elites of Jewish society at this time were basically for Hellenization of the people. Many readily accepted and even desired the intrusion of Greek ways of life into Judea. That's just a fact. They were down for it, all right? Under I always have trouble with this word, Ptolemaic rule, there was no governor of Judea. So there wasn't a king, there wasn't a governor. So who's in charge of Judea at this time? The high priest. It's a religious function, but it became more than that at this time. So the high priest is in charge, really the most important political functionary. And there's a book I do reference here. The chapter is called The Sociological Settings of the Components of First Enoch by Patrick Tiller, and the link is there in the footnote you can see. At the beginning of Ptolemaic rule over Judea, the Jerusalem high priesthood had attained a position of power at the head of what amounted to a temple state. So this is the situation. Thank you. Appreciate it, Link, for sharing the article. Nate, for sharing the link to the article. So this de facto political importance may be why some people understand Onias III to be the Prince of the Covenant of Daniel 11:22. More on that later. Now I'm going to show you something within the article real quick here. If you click on these, it does take you to the bottom, right? Now I'm going to just show you my footnotes here. So I do have footnotes in my blog article. So, for example, the first one, we didn't cover all these. There are many attempts to ID the TR. That's my way to say to identify the teacher of righteousness. See this F.F. Bruce piece in the Jewish Virtual Library. So it's just taking you to more information, right? The early Enoch literature, that's the book I just cited there, and then there's a page number. Kale, he's a really well-known Semiticist from another era, talking about the Daniel 11 situation with Onias III says this interpretation is not warranted by the facts of history. This murder, because we're going to get into his murder, does not at all relate to the matter before us, not only because the Jewish high priest at Antioch did not sustain the relation of a prince of the covenant, because Onias III is going to end up in Antioch, but also because the murder was perpetuated without the previous knowledge of Antiochus. And when the matter was reported to him, the murder was put to death by his command. So he's saying he doesn't agree with that interpretation about a Daniel 11, and he shows in 2nd Maccabees there. Now I'm going to read one other. These are my footnotes I'm reading, so I am going to read some of my footnotes here, okay? Pro-Hellenists at this time in Judea were divided between the Tobiads and the Oniads. The Tobiads were a wealthy yet non-priestly family. They heavily influenced the politics of Judea since circa 400 BC. The Oniads, on the other hand, were an influential dynasty of high priests. High priest Onias III was representative, so that's what he came out of. They were more on the Ptolemaic side of things, more Egyptian and less Seleucid. But what you'll generally find in the literature is it seems like both families in general were actually for some form of Hellenization, but the Tobiads wanted it more. They wanted it worse, right? And sometimes you will see the family or Onias III himself referred to as sometimes traditionalists or something like that, or conservatives. And it's interesting because sometimes in the literature, you know, modern things get read back into problems of that time. And sometimes you'll see some kind of more progressive liberal scholars, almost like a slur against Onias III and the faction that wanted to really retain Jewish culture and Jewish life. And people have brought up the point, like, why is this the case? You know, you're like painting these so-called conservatives as the bad guys. They were trying to preserve Jewish culture and way of life. They're not the bad guys. They were, you know, being imposed upon by essentially, you know, colonialists, you know what I mean, by outside forces who were trying to put a European culture, Greek, that is European in essence, you know, Southern Europe, a way of life upon them. And, you know, these folks wanted to prevent that. And the literature sometimes is like painting these people as like knee-jerk reactionaries or something, you know. Let me see here. Yeah, I see a New Testament theologist. Everybody should subscribe to him as well. Now let's go back up to the top here. We're gonna look at more footnotes later, but you can see the article's a little bit lengthy. I'll tell you how long it's supposed to take to read it in a second, because there's a little time thing in the bottom that gives you the general time that it takes to read it here. And a lot of these things, you can look at from the links that I sent and find out more. So it's not just take my word for it. And anything that I see that's in error, like a small thing, I will correct, because this is not supposed to be like a hit piece. You know what I mean? This idea is just finding out truth and knowledge and information. Understand? But back to this situation where at the time, there was no governor of Judea in between the Testaments, about 200 years before Jesus, right? I could live on sparkling water. If you ever want to just be cool and be nice, don't send me no seltzer. Just send me cans and cans of like San Pellegrino sparkling water or whatever, you know what I mean? I'll be happy, you know what I'm saying? I will. And maybe I'd lose weight too. This de facto political importance may be why some people understand Onias III to be, quote, the Prince of the Covenant of Daniel 11:22. More on that later. It's certainly true that Onias III was the head, in a way, in a manner of speaking, of theocratic Israel at the time, by default at this time. All right, now there's going to be a transition from the Ptolemaic side to the Seleucid rule, which are different factions of Greeks in charge of things. But first, let's find out about the rest of the government in Judea at this time. So there's a general structure on it I want to explain to you. Underneath Onias III, or the high priest at the time, was the Gerousia, there it is in Greek, the phrase, or council of elders, and the National Assembly, which wasn't important at first, but later on became important under the Maccabean rule. And the Maccabeans, of course, mentioned in the Apocrypha and 1st and 2nd Maccabees and other things like that. So around 200 BC, Judea came under Seleucid rule after Antiochus III. So this is not Antiochus IV. That's Antiochus Epiphanes, who a lot of you have heard that name. But after Antiochus III bested the Ptolemies. So they had a little skirmish, well, simplifying it here, and they were out on top. And so, power changes hands after these kinds of things, right? Antiochus III essentially allowed the free practice of Judaism. He wasn't trying to do the hardcore Hellenization and suppression of religion in the way that would come later. He even gave, I got a typo there. It says have. So I'll fix this. Someone remind me. Oh, hey, Nate. The P.O. Box is 18431. It's different now. Sorry. It's 18431. 18431. Ephraim asks, is vocab going to address Judah just saying the term antichrist means anti-Paul? To be honest with you, probably not, because I don't see how it really relates exactly what we're talking about today. I want to do kind of one thing at a time here. Maybe we'll get to talk about it some other time. I don't know, but we'll see. But right now, I just want to focus on this idea of Onias III. It's really kind of off, you know what I mean? So, but Nate, if you could just adjust it, it's 18431. But okay, here we go. All right. Antiochus III allowed, he even gave a 3-year tax exemption, all right, which is pretty cool, and for Judea, and financially supported an expansion of both Jerusalem and the temple. So, not too bad, Now, this right here, though, is a bust of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Not as cool as Antiochus III. We're going to get into that, but that's what he's supposed to look like. That's Antiochus IV Epiphanes. At this time, Onias III, that's his Greek name. His Hebrew name was Honi. And by the way, I'm not going to let, and I hope he doesn't try to do it, but this is just a heads up. I'm trying to be friendly here. I'm not going to let my debate opponent tomorrow, if he's going to try to do this, conflate the personage of Onias III, because his Hebrew name's Honi, with Honi the circle drawer. If you try to do that, there's going to be a problem if that happens. When I say problem is, I'm going to call you on it, and it's going to have to go through some stuff. And I don't just think you'll be able to slide that in there, because I think I've seen you try to make that move before. So it's just a friendly warning. If I was you, I would not try to conflate Honi the circle drawer with Onias III. Just saying. But okay, good. Okay, I wasn't sure if you tried to do that, because I think I saw someone else do that. Okay, you're right. He says different people. Okay, good. So good. Then I was mistaken. I thought one time you were implying that, but apparently you weren't. So good. Okay. Then forget what I just said. Well, don't forget what I just said. But we're good there. Okay. Keep continuing on, because they are different people, of course, is the point. So we agree on that. So he's high priest of Jerusalem, and he took this post around 198 BC. Evidence indicates that Onias III had Ptolemaic sympathies versus the Seleucids. Not that he, hated him. I mean, they had to live with who they had to live with type of thing. But that's sort of more, he basically favored the previous guys a little bit more. During King Seleucid IV Philopator's reign, 187 to 175 BC, Onias III supported the Ptolemies. The pro-Seleucid faction party accused him of being disloyal to the Seleucid rulers. Now, this is in Maccabees, specifically 2nd Maccabees. I should have gave the source there. Now I'm getting, let me make sure it's 2nd. Yeah, I'm almost positive it's 2nd Maccabees 4, but I'd have to go look and see which it is. I was just reading it the other day. But this thing where a guy accuses him, and it's a whole thing, right? And he has to deal with it. So Onias III went to meet with King Seleucid IV to exonerate himself. He's like, I got to deal with this to show him I'm not a traitor type of thing. But he did not succeed, and he had to end up staying in Antioch. Now, we're going to explain how that all happened in a second, but it looks like it didn't really work, all right? Seleucid IV was murdered by Hellenization in 175 BC. That's how these things go. His brother, whose brother? I'm talking about Onias III's brother. Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, guys, you got to give me a break. I jumped right on after the haircut, okay? I didn't mean I gave the wrong person. His brother is the king I was talking about prior, okay? All right, let me see here. D-New says he is covering it because Onias III is an obscure figure that many people have never heard of. It's relevant to the debate tomorrow, and it's for people's information. She is 100% exactly right. That is the reason. Thank you very much. And it's also important. We're going to learn about things that happen between the testaments, okay? So we're learning about things that happen in between the testaments, which is important, because this affects the setting in which Jesus Christ came into. All right. So his brother Antiochus IV, also known as Epiphanes, 1 Maccabees 1:10, he's mentioned there, was a Seleucid king who followed Seleucid IV to rule over Syria. Israel at this time was considered part of Greater Syria, not Palestine. Now, the Romans are going to do that later on as a poke in the eye to Israel. But until then, it had never been called that. It's essentially looked at as Greater Syria at this time. Antiochus IV was a true blue Greek, and he forcibly pushed Hellenism throughout the Seleucid Empire during his reign of 175 to 164 BC. And there's coinage. Take a look at Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Take a look at him. That's him. You got the Greek on the coin there. Side profile, So, continue on down here. I'll put your comment on the screen there, Judah. It's kind of in my face. Let me put the comment down a little bit there. All right. Yeah, all right. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that comment. I hope so. And you guys have been some great supporters throughout the years, and I can pray that continues on. Now, let's talk about Hellenization in Judea. I'm going to define it in a second here, so just hold your horses if you don't know what that is, all right? Jason, so he's clearly going by his Greek name, but he's a Hebrew. And you got to see 2 Maccabees 1:7 to see some of this, what I'm talking about. Onias' brother wanted to replace Judaism with Hellenism. So Onias III is pro-Israel. He's pro-traditions of the fathers. He's so-called a conservative traditionalist, you know what I mean? To me, I'm on his side. I'm on the side of Onias III in these debates and discussions, okay? But his brother's kind of a sellout. So, yeah, he's his blood brother, but he was going to try to kick out his own brother and get Greek stuff in there. That's who Jason is. That's the kind of guy he is. Versus Onias III, who, if you read the literature about him, is frequently referred to as a very valiant man, a very serious, studious man that people respected and kept the law and worked to be pure. You know what I mean? This is who he is. He's got a great reputation. But some of these other jokers during this time, they don't have a great reputation and they don't deserve it. What is Hellenization, though? All right. See, we're right here in the article. What is Hellenization? All right. See, Hellenization. What is that? That is the process of adopting Greek customs. They did it all over the empire, not just to the Jews, okay? Understand? Jason was backed by a rich and powerful family, the pro-Seleucid Tobiad family, which I talked about a little bit in this fourth footnote that we've already read. We kind of jumped the gun on that, but that's all right. After Seleucus' death, Jason bribed Antiochus to become the high priest. Now, it was a bribe, but it was sort of along the lines of, hey, we'll give you more money annually type of thing, you know what I mean? Versus just like, oh, I'm greedy, I need a bribe. Antiochus had his own problems. So like if you understood his political situation, just with it, what he was in, a person could say, oh, I could see why he would want a high priest who's going to give him more money, because he doesn't really care about who's in there, does he? Hey, if they're pro-Greek and they're going to give him more money, let's say you're a secular ruler. Let's say you're a Greek ruler. You're Antiochus IV, okay? Just understanding his viewpoint for a second, okay? Okay, let's just look at his viewpoint for a second. I want to push Hellenization because I believe Greek culture is the best. And who's going to help me do that? A pro-Greek high priest. And I got a high priest here who's going to give me more every year versus this other guy who wants to retain Jewish customs. I'm not sure if he's loyal to me or the Greek rulers before me. Who am I going to go with here? Right? It's kind of like a no-brainer if you're Antiochus IV. I'm just saying. Now, the high priest was supposed to keep his office until his death. For example, remember the cities of refuge? Within the situation of the cities of refuge, the idea was, let's say that, you know, we're on an edge of a hill, you and me, and I don't know why. Okay, I don't know the scenario. I'm not an agricultural guy, but we have our ox out there, and we're doing something that's kind of close to the edge. We got to do some stuff with the ox, whatever. And and your ox in this situation while we're working bumps into me and knocks me over the hill, and I die. I don't know. Okay. Well, my let's say I have a brother. My brother may want some revenge on you. You know what I mean? Yeah, you didn't do it on purpose, but you know, he was supposed to protect me. He's my older brother. Now I'm dead. He's going to come after you. Well, you flee to one of these cities of refuge, right? And you're in these cities of refuge now. And within these cities of refuge, you're not allowed to go in there if you're the person who like charged with protecting it doesn't matter if it's involuntarily, you know, it's manslaughter in essence, right? So how long do you stay in there? Because you might think it's until the blood avenger dies or whatever. But interestingly enough, it's until the high priest dies. Now, some say that's because it's a picture of the high priest's death atoning for the error that was committed that resulted in loss of life. Interesting. I don't know if it's explicitly stated, but when the high priest passes, then you're allowed out. Well, here's the whole point about coming back to this. High priest is supposed to remain in office until his death. So bribing people to get a different high priest in there is against the law in every way, obviously. But nonetheless, it happens because Onias III is still alive at this time when his brother takes over. But you got Jason promising to Hellenize Jerusalem. He's going to build a gymnasium there, very Greek thing. He's going to organize the men into a Greek cultural organization for military and athletic training, all kinds of other stuff. Shout out to, we got some interesting people. Devon J, I think I've seen you around before somewhere. I'm not sure if you're the same guy I'm thinking of, but either way, shout out. And then shout out to Jeremy Soul. First Maccabees even says the Titus for the Pity is the wicked root that emerges from the four. He was a prisoner or hostage according to terms of his father's pictures Rome in the early empire. Shout out to everybody here. What is this? You know, I'm not really sure what you're saying. What? I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not doing that. I don't know. Not sure exactly what you're saying here, but I'm just, just reading through I'm putting together what's in the sources from that era. That's all I'm doing. So continuing on here, let's take a look here. Jason introduced Hellenistic institutions in Jerusalem. Daniel Schwartz translates 2 Maccabees 4:7 this way, so I want to read it here, okay? When he got royal approval and took control of the government, he immediately brought his co-religionists over to the Greek style. So basically turning Jewish folks into Greeks as far as the way they lived and dressed and all that kind of stuff. That's what's going on here. So apparently it was actually popular. So apparently it wasn't just the elites that liked it. Apparently a lot of Jews were into this at this time, unfortunately. Butler writes, the Jews who looked favorably, and there were large numbers of them, on Greek culture opposed Onias and espoused the case of his brother Jason. But the pro-Greek actions were condemned in 2 Maccabees 4:11. All right? So the Apocrypha is not canonical, but that doesn't mean it's useless or not important. We've always had that position and understood that. And so the sources here are primarily intertestamental literature, the Apocrypha is sometimes called, 1st and 2nd Maccabees, and of course also Josephus. All right, from Onias III adjacent to Menelaus. All right, so it's 172 BC. It's 3 years after Jason became high priest, and there's a rival named Menelaus. Now, apparently Jason trusted this guy because he sent him on some kind of mission to Antiochus, but when he ends up going there, instead he ends up bribing Antiochus with even more money that Jason promised. And this is the problem with the bribes, right? Another guy can outbribe you. According to 2nd Maccabees, Menelaus was a Benjamite. Now, why is that important? Who could be a high priest? Levite, son of Aaron, not a Benjamite. Wrong tribe. Right? You guys know the rules, don't you? At least you know some of them. So this is a problematic. This is not good. But this is also what's happening. So now it transitions from Jason to Menelaus. So why? Because Antiochus still needed that additional tribute. So he removed Jason from the high priesthood and gave it to Menelaus. Jason's forced into exile. 2 Maccabees 4:33 relays that Onias III publicly exposed the fact that Menelaus had robbed the temple. So to pay for this stuff, what did he do? He took some of the gold vessels of the temple to sell. This is in 2 Maccabees 4:32, for example. So I just wrote it this way. Onias III denounced all this shenanigans. Yeah, you know? Judah says, see how these guys went at Onias III's position? Why? Okay. Man, why does it keep on going over? It's like, it's supposed to go right there. Well, as we read earlier, there was no governor. Of course, there's no king. And so at this time, the high priest ends up being the de facto leader of Judea at this time. And so people wanted power, so they're trying to get it because it's basically the pinnacle of power you could have in a situation where you're not really an autonomous, self-determining government. You know, that's what's going on. And so this is kind of common thing. You know, this is what people do, right? Crabs in a barrel, all that kind of stuff, right? So Onias ain't down with this, denounces the shenanigans. All right. And that's that Sadducee depiction, but the other one I showed on Wikipedia is supposed to be a depiction of Onias III. Maybe I should switch it all out or something like that. I don't know. Now let's talk about the death of Onias III. Okay, you guys ready? Here's where it's kind of getting a little bit intense. This is getting a little bit intense, so it's going to get very interesting. You guys ready? Anyways, so because of the use of draconian, I don't know what you're. Nicodemus, I don't know who you're talking to or what you're saying. You're honestly, all due respect, you're really losing me. I'm not. You got to be more specific about what exactly you're talking about, or because you seem upset about something, but I actually don't understand what you're upset about. No, because I'm going to do judo later. I mean, are you going to defend the Greeks at this time? I don't know I don't understand. I mean, look, Nicodemus, if you're like Orthodox or something like that, you can't get too upset because I'm reading from basically a source that the Orthodox would accept as deuterocanonical, 1st and 2nd Maccabees. You know what I'm saying? Know what I mean? All right, continuing on here, Onias there. Menelaus instigated the murder of Onias III at Antioch in 171 BC. But Nicodemus, we're not attacking the Greeks of today. So why do you need to defend the Greeks of today? We are literally talking about people 200 years before the birth of Jesus. I do not understand I just don't understand. But okay, I'm getting a little distracted here, and I want to get through this because we got important information tonight. But shout out to the live chat. Please support, thumbs up, share the link, make a comment, all of that. Become a channel member, become a Patreon. Bada boom, bada bing. Menelaus instigated the murder of Onias III at Antioch in 171 BC. the Syrian governor, apparently. Andronicus is the one who had it carried out. We find Onias III at Antioch, having fled near the heathen sanctuary of Daphne. Now, I'm going to tell you something, Judah. I know you're here and I know you're listening. To me, reading this, even though I have a lot of respect for Onias III as I read about him and all this kind of stuff, it's a little weird that first of all, it's a little weird that he left. Okay, he kind of abandoned his post, you know, just saying. And it's weird that he went next to the heathen sanctuary of Daphne. Now, there could be different explanations for that, but it's a strange place. And I'm not the first person to point this out, to find a zealous, because he's a zealous priest, and forcibly retired high priest. Commentators have noted that wild sex parties, orgies, consecrated the groves of Daphne. And yet he's hanging out there. Don't know why. Now, I understand it's some kind of refuge for him, and it's a little odd, okay? That's all I'm saying. Now, I'm going to read here from 2 Maccabees. Therefore, Menelaus, taking Andronicus aside, urged him to kill Onias. Andronicus came to Onias and, resorting to treachery, offered him sworn pledges and gave him his right hand. And in spite of his suspicion, because Onias III might have thought, what chance or what choice do I have? You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Radar Apologetics in the house. Everyone subscribe to him. How you doing, brother? It is a beautiful thing to see you. That's my man, really smart guy. He's got the information. He's got the details. He does great work, and we all know it. So you get a little sound there. You know what I'm saying? In spite of his suspicion, he persuaded Onias to come out from the place of the sanctuary of Daphne, by the way. Then, Dominic, I don't know who you are. You guys got to tell me who you are. Everyone wants to come on today's show. I'll let some of you guys come on the show at the end of the show. I want to get through the information first. I had no idea this was going to be such an interesting, controversial thing where all these people were going to want to come on. We're talking about Onias III, my goodness. But hey, I want you on too, but you got to be around at the end, okay? All right. So he comes out because it's probably like, what choice do I have? You know what I'm saying? In spite of his suspicion, persuaded Onias to come out for the place of sanctuary. Then, with no regard for justice, he immediately put him out of the way, which means kills him. For this reason, not only Jews, but many also of other nations were grieved and displeased at the unjust murder of the man. Now, that's interesting. That is interesting. Let's talk to our One West buddies for a second here. One Westers paint, all Greeks, all other nations, a lot of times as evil, wicked. And, you know what I'm saying, sometimes you got the situation where you do see a very nationalistic emphasis in some of the apocryphal books. No doubt about that. Okay. But nonetheless, within that, the author of 2 Maccabees says, hey, people from other nations, not just Hebrews, not just Jews, they were grieved that at his death because they knew it was unjust. They grieved for him. And they did. And remember, he's someone trying to stand against Hellenization. So if everyone's so evil, all these other nations and all that stuff, if you're a One Wester, I'm asking you this. Why were people of other nations grieving and displeased at the unjust murder of a high priest who is trying to keep God's law as best he can in a very difficult situation and trying to keep covenant and trying to maintain custom and Torah and Tanakh? Why would they grieve at that? That they're all wicked and you guys see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? Oh, okay, Dominic, all due respect, you want to talk about something entirely different. And I'm glad you told me that, because if I would have brought you on, I'd had to get you off right away. And so we're just not talking about that tonight. We are talking about this. You have to come on in a smoke room or something, okay? Okay, my friend? But not tonight, okay? It's the wrong show for that, all due respect. Josephus gives a somewhat different version in Antiquities 1205 about this time. Onias having died. So this is the other thing, Judah, and I'm gonna if we have a deeper conversation here, I'm gonna ask you about this. Some of the sources about Onias III conflict, my friend. We don't have a lot of information about him as we might want. We sort of have him in the midst of events, but we don't have, like, for example, really his teaching. There's a lot missing, in this biographical picture. And here's the thing. Some of the sources contradict. They conflict. Now, I don't hold Josephus, inerrant, so it's like not a problem that way. But it shows us there's some challenges trying to paint a historical picture of who he was, trying to reconstruct the truth about Onias III. It's important. Anyways, about this time Onias having died, he, Epiphanes, gives a high priesthood to his brother Jesus, you guys, so that Josephus also has some problems with some of the names in the story. For the son whom Onias left, well, he was only a child. This Jesus, who was brother of Onias, was deprived of the high priesthood. The king, being angry with him, gave it to his younger brother Onias. So Josephus is wrong. Jason, who he has it translated as Jesus in here, but Jason and Onias III, they're not related to Menelaus, but he also gets the name wrong for Menelaus. He's saying it's his younger brother Onias. So Josephus mistakes Menelaus as Oniad, who is the third brother of Onias III and Jason. I know it's a little confused. Yeah, so see, Judah knows. Judah knows. Let me show this real quick here. Judah knows. So he knows exactly what I'm talking about. So this is a problem, though, because then you got to say, okay, how do we reconstruct this? Josephus got Onias IV and Onias III confused. Onias IV built a temple in Egypt under Ptolemy VI. And by the way, that is in my notes at the bottom. If you read my footnotes, the last thing you just said, it is actually in my notes. So Devon J, we're definitely gonna have a debate about that. I see your comment. That's the real challenge here with that claim. I think that's a claim that is going to have problems being proved, all right? But nonetheless, I understand. You're not the only one who's make that claim, so I'm not saying you're crazy or evil. I'm just saying I don't buy it, and I think there's good reason why people should not buy it. Continuing on here. So Antiochus, he's irritated by all this hoopla, right? But another bribe from Menelaus mellowed him out a little bit for now. And so now you got from Jason to Menelaus and then back to Jason. How did that happen? Well, eventually Jason drove out Menelaus, but then Jason got killed. Apparently, Antiochus seems to think that Judea is essentially in a state of revolt because there's a lot going on, right? He's like, what's going on over there? And some commentators say there's reason to believe that he felt essentially his royal dignity has been insulted in this process. So what does he do? Attacks Jerusalem, plunders the temple, leads Judeans away as slaves. And just stop right there real quick. Just let that marinate and mellow. I'm not going to go more into detail on that, but I could. This is part of what happened here, people. Are you understanding the hint I'm dropping? Some of you do, some of you don't. Antiochus banned Jewish customs. This is Antiochus IV, not the third, remember, including circumcision in December of 167 BC. And apparently the punishment was his threat. What was the threat to violate? Or what was the threat if you did violate? Death penalty. Very, very serious. Yeah, Jimmy Berman gets it. So you understand. You're tracking, Jimmy. I see you, bro. Additionally, Jews would not sacrifice to Zeus. Some commentators say, well, that didn't happen. But according to a lot of Jewish sources, they're going to have to sacrifice to Zeus. It's reported that a statue of Zeus and an altar for pig sacrifices. Is that a pig or a horse? I don't know. I can't really do a pig. Pig sacrifices was erected in the temple. So some of this is debated, by the way. Some of it's viewed as this is legendary, this and that, but this is what's reported in the sources. All right, so this is a different rendition of something I showed earlier, probably actually more a low-res version of the Antiochus coin, but I included it in there because it's somewhat different. Now let's get into the Maccabeans. All this insanity. So remember, Onias III is dead now. It would lead to what? A priest named Mattathias, Mattatyahu of the Hanukkah story, and his Hasmonean family galvanizing the Maccabean revolt. Ooh, the Maccabean revolt. They're about to spark it off and set it off with the fire. So they're about to spark this thing off, right? It's Maccabean revolt. Well, guess what? It succeeded by 160 BC. It was essentially successful. One of his 5 sons, Judas Maccabeus, led the ensuing revolt, declared himself high priest in 165 BC. Problem. What family lineage is he? Huh? Not right. He would be followed in office by 2 of his brothers from 153 to 135 BC. The Judean kingdom achieved independence in 140 BC, but that's going to change when the Romans come. But for now, doing all right. So for the next 100 years, politics of the region were heavily influenced by this one family, the Maccabean family. Ephraim asks a question. It's kind of irrelevant, but I'll just answer you. Would you have eaten pork at the time of Christ's ministry? Absolutely not. If I was Jewish, absolutely not. I definitely would not have. Next 100 years, politics region were heavily influenced by this one family, the Maccabean family. The Apocryphal Book of First Maccabees describes the events between 170 130 BC, and Book 12 of Josephus' Antiquities covers the era of 323 165 BC. So I'm giving you the point that you can look more into this. You can look at more into this. So with some of the historical context in view, let's return to an issue raised briefly earlier in this piece. Is the death of Onias III written about in Daniel 11:22? So this is a screenshot from a video that if we have time, I'm going to play later, but we may not have time. But let me just give a shout out to the channel who made the video. The Study of Christianity, High Priest Onias, Daniel 11, part 12, a year ago, 1,300 views. Actually, it's a really good video. You should have way more love than you do, my friend. But I don't know if we're going to have time to play it or not here. But you don't have to agree with it all to still think that he did well in his video, because I think he did. So let's talk about this idea of Onias III is the Prince of the Covenant of Daniel 11:22. Is there any historical support for the belief that the prince/leader, depends how you translate the Hebrew word, of the covenant in Daniel 11:22 was Onias III? So this is a claim relating to Onias III. Was this term even used of the high priest of Israel? That's a very important question. People get into this and they never ask the basic question. Was a high priest, oops, I see a duplicate there. So I see typos in the article. I did publish it late last night, so I got to fix that. Right there, I see my article here. My bad. A typo. It just repeats the same word, so it's not a big typo. But was this term high priest for the high priest ever used? Prince of the covenant or leader of the covenant. So first, let's take a look at the actual verse. Daniel 11:22. Armies shall be utterly swept away before him and broken, even the prince of the covenant. So some people say this is Onias III. So if it's Onias III, and I'm only reading one verse just because we simply don't have time to do all Daniel 11. There's a lot here, people. There's a lot here. Daniel is a very challenging, perplexing, interesting, fascinating book. There's so much, and it's not even long as like Isaiah is, but it just deals with this time, and it's very interesting. It's a minefield in so many ways. But we can only look at a little bit of it because I'm already going. How long am I going? I mean, you see, and I'm trying to bring people on. It's already an hour. Oh my gosh. And plus I was an hour late. So how would you interpret that? Armies shall be utterly swept away before him. Like what, what would that be? Let's see. So I'm gonna look at something real quick here. I bring in my ESV study Bible. I look at 11:22. Now, let me just show you this is my ESV study Bible, okay? I'm just going to tell you what it says, okay? I didn't really plan on this part of the show. Just a little comment. It's interesting to see comments like this, right? And they start in verse 21. In his place shall arise a contemptible person. So that's the first thing in Daniel 11:21. Antiochus IV Epiphanes reigned 175 to 164 BC, who was also the little horn of chapter 8. He took the name Antiochus Epiphanes, manifest one, that's what it means. But others called him Epimanes, which means madman, as a way to slur him. Seleucus IV, Philopater's son, Demetrius the first Soter. By the way, we've discussed some of these people in this article, so you see we're tracking in the right direction. You guys understand what I'm saying? We're in the right frame. Was a rightful heir to the throne, but because he was imprisoned in Rome, Antiochus IV Epiphanes took the throne, even though royal majesty had not been given to him. He paid off important people for supporting him, which is what the phrase "to obtain the kingdom by flatteries" refers to. So it is really almost certain that this little section does refer to Antiochus Epiphanes. Because of that, a lot of liberal critics say Daniel was not written before the events listed. It was written during the events listed, which would make it pseudo-history because it purports to be written during a different time during the Babylonian Empire, by and large. Well, part of it, you got the Persian element in there too. But you guys are seeing, because Daniel lived a long time, he was through different sections there. And so, people say that because they don't believe in prophecy, but there are challenges with Daniel. It's an interesting book to defend apologetically and all that. But nonetheless, we're not getting into all that tonight, and I'm not claiming to be the expert about that. But continuing on here, Ptolemy IV Philometor, 181 to 145 BC of Egypt, came against Antiochus IV, but was defeated and held as a hostage. Later, Ptolemy VI, the Prince of the Covenant. So in their interpretation and understanding, the Prince of the Covenant listed here is Ptolemy VI. because he made an alliance, a covenant with Antiochus IV to regain his throne because his brother, Ptolemy the Eighth, Euergetus the Second Physcon, there's a lot of names to read, it's like one long name, had taken it while he was imprisoned in Syria. This worked, and he received his throne back, but later he broke this covenant and joined with his brother Ptolemy the Eighth to force Antiochus IV out of Pelusium, one of Egypt's fortress cities. So I'm going to read the context surrounding it here real quick here now. Daniel 11, starting in verse 21, all right? Actually, let me just start in 20. Then shall arise in his place one who shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom. But within a few days he shall be broken, neither in anger nor in battle. In his place shall arise a contemptible person to whom royal majesty has not been given. He shall come in without warning and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Armies shall be utterly swept away before him and broken, even the prince of the covenant. So who is that? Well, they're saying in the ESV Study Bible, they hold, and this is sort of outside the realm of where I really wanted to cover tonight, but I'm kind of just wanted to look at this a little bit with you guys, that it's Ptolemy the Sixth, the prince of the covenant there. And from that time that an alliance is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, and he shall become strong with a small people. So it keeps on going, and when you read it, you're like, wow, okay, this is very interesting. What is this talking about? There's more there, but we're going to go to other stuff, and we need to kind of stick in a limited frame here. But here's what I want to bring out. Now, it's not definitive until I know every source and every place, but there's other people who have said the same thing what I'm about to say here. There is no reference that I can find anywhere to a high priest ever being explicitly called some title that's like Prince of the Covenant or Leader of the Covenant. That is significant because if you're going to make this Onias III, it's like, well, are you sure? Especially when you look at what's before and after. Now, I'm not saying that Judah does this. I actually don't know for sure what he does with this specific thing. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? But there are people who do say the Prince of the Covenant here prophesied is Onias III. Now, someone may say, whoa, but was the other guy ever called that explicitly? Fair point to an extent, and that's part of what we're trying to do. I'm trying to write a somewhat user-friendly, scholarly-leaning, you know what I'm saying, blog post. So I'm trying to be careful on how I lay things out. I'm not doing the tricks. Clearly, absolutely, definitely. You see, if you don't agree, you're stupid. People do these tricks to try to make you, you know what I'm saying? I'm not doing that. So I'm trying to be careful here. So even though there is no reference that I know of anywhere or that I've seen anyone ever bring out to a high priest being called something like the prince or leader of the covenant, it's not definitive. It's not definitive, of course, but it is notable. I suppose one could argue, so this is part of what scholarship does where you say, well, the other side could say this. You know, you interact sometimes with opposing positions. I'm doing it briefly, though. This is not like a major monograph I'm writing here. Right? I suppose one could argue that as the high priest, it fell to Onias III to ensure that Israel properly maintained covenant with Yahweh. Someone might say that. Therefore, he should be identified as the prince or leader of the covenant. Someone might put it those ways. In fact, I'm saying I suppose, but I saw articles that literally said that. You know what I'm saying? I'm just not blowing everyone's spot. You know what I mean? Some may... Oh. How many typos... This is supposed to say, are you? Or say, or think. But it says that. Some may think that line of reasoning is a bit of an unnatural stretch. As of now, I am personally unsure. So I'm saying I'm sure because I'm trying to be careful and fair. But honestly, I do think it's a stretch to call the high priest a leader or prince of the covenant. It's not impossible, but it's significant. Now, next thing. Additionally, there is a text-critical issue. It's covered in the endnote. Oh, it says endnote 4, but I need to change that to endnote 7. But it still has the same link. Covered in endnote below in Daniel 11:22 regarding the phrase Prince of the Covenant. Now, I am going to go down there. This is important, okay? This is significant. I don't know if everyone knows about this. In the Greek Septuagint. All right, so I got my Septuagint right here. And in the Greek Septuagint, the phrase, the Prince of the Covenant, is not there It's a phrase translated from the Hebrew phrase on the screen because, of course, the Septuagint's Greek. And I show you from Sweets LXX where it does not exist. Now, if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and say, well, was the phrase Prince of the Covenant in the Dead Sea Scrolls? We can't answer that question because the section of Daniel that we're looking at right now is not extant. That means it's not part of the Dead Sea Scrolls literature, so we don't know what their position or what those texts would say, rather, because we don't have those. We don't have everything from Qumran that was ever created, right? So we don't have that section of Daniel in the DSS, so we can't check it to see if it's there. Now, if I was deceptive, I'd be like, it's not in the Dead Sea Scrolls either, which is technically true, but it's unfair because it's not an extant portion of Scripture, so you don't get to say it's not there. Understand? People do all kinds of tricks and they argue, and I catch them. And I'm not saying Judah, by the way. I'm saying people that do stuff like this. I remember Divine Prospect, with all due respect, he tried to pull this kind of trick with Matthew 28 at the end, and I didn't appreciate it because it wasn't an honest way to argue. When something's not extant in a certain manuscript, we had a discussion about a certain codex, you can't say it's not there if the whole section's not there. That's deceptive. I hope you guys are tracking, all right? Now, the later Greek translation of the Tanakh by Theodotion, 150 AD. So the Septuagint is earlier. It does include the phrase Prince of the Covenant, and I show you in the Greek. It's on the screen. It's in the footnote, right? So nothing's hidden. Theodotion is not as old as the Septuagint, though. Septuagint is translated from about 250 BC. It's completed in stages. This means by the 2nd century AD, so this is after Christ, the phrase Prince of the Covenant was in the Hebrew manuscripts, at least that Theodotion was working with, right? But apparently it was not in the Hebrew manuscripts that the translators of the Septuagint used before that. Now, I'm actually literally going to show you. So it's not going to show it very well here, but in a Septuagint, when you come to the book, hold on, you know what, hold on. We're going to go back to the screen, but I need to make this larger because I am trying to show you guys something. This is a textual critical issue that relates to it. So if you look, this is a Septuagint. On the top, that basically says Daniel in English. And see how it says OG? That means the Old Greek. It's kind of funny it says OG, right? So OG here means Old Greek. So the Old Greek is the older rendition. Now, if you because it's the Septuagint original. Now, if you look at verse 22, you'll see it ends at au2. Those who know a little bit of Greek can see the au2 there. Right before 23, where you get kai. See the chi, that's conjunction and. But right before 23, where you have chi, you have au2 or auto, as people might say, and that's where it ends. Now, on the other side of the Septuagint, I'm in Daniel 11:22. It's not the next page, it's actually Theodotion's Greek. And the way you know that is it has the capital letter there. See the capital letter? I'm trying to show you. It's in the what's called the gutter of the book. I know it's, oh man, it's phasing out. Sorry, I'm having more trouble showing you this part of the book. Man, this may not work. You know what I'm going to do? Hold on. I'm going to show you clear. I'm going to switch cameras. Just give me 1 second here. I got a great idea. And I'm going to show you. This is a great idea. I'm going to take it off the dog. Let's see, hold on. Just give me a second here. And I'm going to show it to you. Because I want you guys to see this. I know this is a little bit, it's like a lot going on or whatever. Just stay with me, okay? We're learning here together. Okay. Boom, there we go. Okay, now, if you look here at this side, and I know it's a little blurry. I'm trying to fix that. This is the Theodotion side of the Septuagint of Daniel 11. And the way you know it's Theodotion is because it has this capital theta. And if you go to 22... you'll notice, now it showed up nice and clear. See where the au2 is? Well, after that, there's more. See where it says 18? That's the readers giving you the definition of it at the bottom. But notice how there's more that is in verse 22 that was not in the Septuagint Old Greek in Theodotion's translation. Then when you get to 23, see where it says chi? See where it says chi in Greek? Notice what's before the chi. That's not au2, like was over here in the older Greek, showing you that the phrase Prince of the Covenant is actually not in the oldest Septuagint manuscripts. Did you guys know that? Now, I'm gonna show you an even more clear visual representation. I'm actually not even done showing you this because I really want you guys to understand this. And I know this is a little technical, but it all relates. Okay, so we're gonna flip back over to the screen, and I had this pretty much planned out. It's going pretty well. You can readily see this fact of what I was just saying about Daniel 11:22, the end of it not being in the Old Greek, in a side-by-shot screen comparison I did for my Logos app. All right. So on the left, it's opposite of what was in the physical Septuagint I was just showing you here. The Theodotion's is on the left, not on the right. On the left is Theodotion's translation. You see that? And on the right is the LXX. Now, understand, the Septuagint, the LXX, is older than Theodotion's translation of the Septuagint. Well, of the into Greek. It's not the Septuagint, but into Greek. You see what I'm saying? Now, look. This red thing, I included this. I did this in this arrow. This is mine. What is this designed to show you? What I was just trying to show you physically, this gap right here. Why is there a gap right here? Remember, this is not left column and right column. The left column is literally the same text as the right column, meaning it's the same part of Daniel 11:22. Do you guys understand that? So here's the thing. In Theodotion's, it includes the phrase, Prince of the Covenant. In the Old Greek of the Septuagint, the phrase is missing. It is not there. So here's what I'm saying. Prince of the Covenant is not in the oldest Greek translation of Daniel 11:22. So am I saying it didn't exist or it shouldn't belong there? It's a later insertion? Absolutely. In textual criticism, in this kind of case, you can't definitively say that because someone could make an argument that perhaps Theodotion somehow, because remember, this is in 150 that he's doing it. This is like a couple hundred years after the Septuagint. You can make an argument, I suppose, that Theodotion somehow got a hold of older Hebrew manuscripts than the translators of the Septuagint were working with. But it just seems very unlikely. Septuagint most likely was done by a committee of scholars in Egypt, the best of the best, and there was like funding involved and a whole thing. And they were before, so it'd be abnormal if somehow Theodotion managed to get older manuscripts of the Hebrew that he was working with. It seems pretty clear that between the completion of the Septuagint from the Hebrew manuscripts, from the time which is earlier than before Christ, into the time of Theodotion, which is 150 AD or so, what's it show? Somehow that phrase was now in there. Prince of the Covenant, but it wasn't in the oldest. That is very significant. Do you guys see? I hope you see that that's significant. Now, when we're trying to be careful and we're trying to argue in a more scholarly manner versus just body bagging. By the way, I mean I'm not dissing your comment in there because I understand why people might feel that way, but I'm trying to do a careful rendition. But I want people to draw their own conclusions. It is important to understand. Any case made from Daniel 11:22 does need to be held with some measure of trepidation because it is not in the oldest manuscripts according to the different Greek translations from the Hebrew manuscripts. So at the very least, a person must recognize Daniel 11:22, not the whole verse. I hope I understands what I'm saying. Daniel 11:22 is in both. But the phrase Prince of the Covenant is only in the newer ones, which in textual criticism isn't usually good. So if you make an argument from it, you need to at least understand it's a disputed text. When I say disputed, I don't mean people are debating the interpretation. And the text critical realm, when I say disputed, what I'm saying is disputed in the sense of there's some question about the veracity, the legitimacy of that specific line in this text. Now, it's not an unbiblical, horrible thing. It could still be interpreted properly, and interpreters usually take it as, okay, it's there because they know it's in Theodotion. But it's important to understand. Very important to understand that text critical issue in relationship to the question. Because if Prince of the Covenant's not there, you don't got Onias III. I say he's not there interpreted properly anyway. But if you don't have the phrase that's related to him, you're even in more trouble, you know? So I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not arguing that way today. I'm trying to speak in a different type of way here. All right? that the murder of Onias III is prophesied, but I'm not convinced. It seems highly unlikely considering all the factors against it. Now, there's other people who say, yeah, but the death of Onias III is also in Daniel 9:26. So let's look at that. Let's look here at Daniel 9:26. So those who hold that the death of Onias III can be found in Daniel 11:22 may tie in Daniel 9:26 as well, arguing that as high priest, Onias III was an anointed one, Mashiach. Most of us know that word, Messiah, translated. Prophecy was given in about 536 BC. Now, that's a traditional dating. Liberal scholars are going to say, this moron, YouTube, with the fade, he thinks that Daniel was written in 536 BC. Everyone knows it's prophecy ad hoc, after the fact. It's a pseudo-prophecy. It's history written as prophecy. It's not 536 BC. Well, the way it's presented in the story, and I believe it's true for a variety of reasons, even old books like Josh McDowell's Daniel and the Critic's Den, I think do a good job of proving the case that Daniel is in the right place, that the Bible mentions him. Nonetheless, let's still deal with Daniel 9:26 regardless, because the dating of Daniel is a different issue. Here's what it says. After the 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing. So, okay, sounds like someone's going to die at a certain time, right? We're getting that so far. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Who's that? What's going on there? Its end shall come with the flood, and to the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed. Now, there's more in Daniel 9. We just don't have time to go over it all, especially if I'm trying to bring on the Torah Nights at the end of the show. But I'm going to just tell you where I'm at, okay? Based on what I've read thus far, Daniel 9:26 seems much more likely to be a reference to the death of Jesus than to the death of Onias III. I'm going to show you why in a second, but an anointed one, that's essentially Messianic language. He's going to be cut off. He's going to have nothing. And there's going to be a prince who comes after the death of this anointed one, and he's going to destroy the city and the sanctuary after. Doesn't say how long after, but it's after the death. This is important. Follow along. Follow along. You guys following along? You're listening? You're listening? All right. Some take an anointed one and the prince to be one and the same. So notice the text. It's got anointed one and then prince. I'm going to tell you why that doesn't seem likely. Because chronologically, you have a problem because the anointed one is cut off in 925a. So how could the prince of 925b be the same person? But people who argue for this will say an anointed prince. And guess what? Sometimes they'll even make this argument for Onias III. They'll say he was the anointed prince who was cut off. I don't think so. Because it looks like the anointed one's cut off and the prince comes after him. Do you guys see why that's a problem? How could it be Onias III, who's the prince? And by the way, this even is further evidence against the prince, him being the prince in Daniel 11. This is really problematic for this position because he's cut off already. So some people will take it and say, oh, he's the anointed prince, Christou Hegomenon. But it doesn't say anointed prince. You have an anointed one and a prince that's separate. Now, one reason that 926 is likely foretelling the death of Jesus, and I give more in the links here, is because also the preceding verse. Can I show you the preceding verse of Daniel 9:25? Know therefore and understand that from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks. Now, someone will say, oh, but look, there it is. Okay, it is there true, too, but that doesn't mean it's the same one in the next verse. Now, this gets into the Daniel prophecy, which is a really interesting prophecy, and we're not doing this. We're not doing that, and I'm not even acting like I'm prepared to do that tonight, like to do a whole lesson on this. You know, that's a very intense discussion to have. Then for 62 weeks should be built again with squares and moat, but in a troubled time. There's a lot to discuss about that, but we need to keep it moving. Do you guys want to see what the ESV says real quick? We can. I feel like people, when I say ESV, by this I mean ESV Study Bible. Because I sometimes like to see ESV Study Bible is like a serious study Bible. And the notes are pretty decent and representative of commentators across the board. So let's just see what they say. The promised restoration of God's people and sanctuary would come in 3 stages. See note on verse 24, 27 for various views of the actual dates. The first 7 sevens would run from the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem to the time when that rebuilding was complete, perhaps 458 to 409 BC or 445 to 396. There's different ways you can calculate this, by the way. The period of restoration, along with the subsequent 62 sevens after the city that had been rebuilt, will be a time of trouble. The Messianic rule would make his appearance at the end of these 69 sevens. Even the appearing of this anointed one, so here's our verse we're talking about, a prince would not immediately usher in the peace and righteousness that Jeremiah anticipated. Instead, the anointed one, Mashiach, from which Messiah is derived, himself will be cut off, according to verse 26, leaving him with nothing. Surely a reference to the crucifixion of Christ, and that is how I take it. After the cutting off of the anointed one, the people of the prince, Nagid, that's the word there in Hebrew, who was to come, would destroy Jerusalem and its sanctuary. That's important because, guys, Antiochus didn't do this. He didn't do this. Someone else did, though. I'm going to tell you who in a second here because it's in the commentary. Because Antiochus didn't do this, people. Many commentators understand this coming prince as a reference to the Roman general Titus, and I think that's right. Because his army destroyed Jerusalem in AD 70 or people understand it as a reference to a future Antichrist. Don't know about that. Excuse me, I gotta turn off this light. Or fan. Sorry, the fan sometimes dries out my throat when I have it on. Now, there's more in this to talk about that, but I'm not gonna read the whole note, okay? So let's take a look at this here. So Devon J says, if I'm not mistaken, the prince there is Antiochus who destroyed the city and the sanctuary. Okay, so a pretty common interpretation. So I'm not telling you, you're crazy or anything like that, okay? But I think there's a problem. Antiochus didn't destroy the city. He simply didn't. He came with his army. No doubt about that. But he didn't destroy the city. And he didn't destroy the sanctuary. He desecrated it. You feel me? So I don't think Antiochus can be the guy. That's why I do believe it's General Titus in 70 AD. You got some pictures of that real quick, and I'm going to get into it in the article. But, he comes in. What happens? This is obviously a painting, but I think this painting is instructive. This is a painting of the destruction that is said to have been wreaked on Jerusalem in 70 AD when Titus came in with his armies. Here, let's, can I give some sound effects of that? I think we need some fire. Here, let me get some fire. I think we need, it's kind of messed up in a way, right? But I need a drink of water, so I'm just taking It's kind of messed up, I know. But it seems much more likely that it's Titus because of the situation. When you add it all up and look, because Antiochus just doesn't meet the qualifications because he doesn't destroy Jerusalem. He doesn't. So there's a problem there for him to be Antiochus. D.A. Carson, bolded mine, that means the bolded letters are mine, not his. He writes this: critical scholarship, setting the writing of Daniel in the context of the 2nd century BC, sees the period in view as intended to stretch from the 6th century to the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, the 490 years being understood either in round terms or literally and perhaps mistakenly. But from the perspective of the New Testament, it is hard to avoid the conclusion that the anointed one of verse 25 is fulfilled in Jesus Christ, whose coming brings atonement and the end of guilt. Because when you read the whole section in Daniel 9, there's certain qualifications that are given that must be met that Onias III doesn't meet. And I'm going to go into it in a second here. Now, I suppose you could have a typological or even dual fulfillment that could be possible for Daniel 9:26. So I'm trying to argue for the other side here. Meaning someone could say, that is the death of Onias III. And I could say, okay, I'll take that. I'll say it, that's the immediate fulfillment. But if you hold to a dual fulfillment model, you could say, but ultimately it's fulfilled in Jesus. Or typological, meaning, yes, it happened here, but it's setting it up for the ultimate example of the type, who is Jesus. But nonetheless, I don't think it is referring, Daniel 9:26, at all to Onias III. There's problems with it. Now, this is the scene of when they returned from the stuff from the temple there under Titus, because he destroyed Jerusalem. You know, this is a real thing. This isn't a painting from later. This is what the Romans were bragging about. As a side note, the prince, Nagid, here is also seen as various figures, including Roman General Titus, who destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. By the way, if it is Titus, who makes much more sense of the prophecy, because it says the prince who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, Titus did that, and Antiochus didn't, then it makes sense to look at the death in Daniel 9 as being Jesus, because then it's in the right time frame, not Onias III. Important to put this together chronologically. Now, I have a brief word about Messiah, but I don't think it's relevant. You guys know about this. Now, let's rewind this a little bit. I want to kind of like go back and run this through a second time, okay? Let's redo, remix, redux. Well, so Judah, let me explain, because some people don't understand what I'm doing here. I need to explain what I'm doing here. I knew this might create some confusion. I am not saying it's a dual fulfillment. That is me trying to offer an olive branch to an interpretation I don't agree with. I think it's absolutely Jesus Christ and absolutely General Titus. I feel pretty sure about that. What I'm trying to do is offer an olive branch. If a person wanted to make it about Onias III, a trying to give him a potential theological inlet to get in that situation when it seems very clearly to be Jesus and Titus, mentioned in Daniel 9:25-26. So I don't think it's a dual fulfillment situation. I don't think it's a typological situation at all. I think Daniel's pointing forward to the crucifixion of Jesus, absolutely definitively. So I want people to understand. I really want people to understand. When I said that, that is saying, I suppose one could argue this way. It's sort of steel-manning the argument, or saying, you could go this route, I suppose. But for the reasons I gave, and I think they're really good reasons. In the article, I try to be careful because I'm not trying to put anyone on blast. But I think really it's obvious these aren't about Onias III in any meaningful way for a few reasons. And I've laid it out. Rewind the show and ask yourself if that's the case. So some do see this reference to Onias III murder in Daniel 11:22. They identify Onias with the Prince of the Covenant, the Nagid Brit, as mentioned. Many of these scholars also believe Daniel 9 is about Antiochus and Onias III, high priest. Now remember, a lot of that is because there's a presupposition here, all right? What's the presupposition? The presupposition is that Daniel was written after the fact. It's later. Real quick, I see you guys saying vocab called Onias the Messiah. I knew we might have to deal with this here at some point. If you say an anointed one in Scripture, it does not always equal the Messiah. This is a common error. It's a common mistake. But you can say someone is anointed by God without it being the Messiah. So let's go back up to this call out quote I had, actually, or text I had. So we know Messiah is Hebrew. Mashiach means anointed one. Christos is the Greek translation of Messiah. This is where you get Jesus Christ. When Israel was ruled by kings, the king was anointed during the inauguration ceremony. It's symbolic. What's supposed to be real, right? Oil will be poured on his head, like 1 Samuel 10:1, 2 Samuel 23:1. Cyrus is called an anointed one. But does that mean Cyrus was the Messiah? Daniel doesn't think so. Biblical writers didn't think so. They knew that. You can't have the promised Messiah, the anointed one. I use it in a manner of speaking to differentiate. You can't have him be Cyrus. Well, Judah, do you deny that Cyrus is called an anointed one in the text of Scripture? He certainly is. I believe it's Isaiah 45? So if that's the case, is he the Messiah? Then Cyrus is the Messiah. He's called an anointed one. Done deal. Close the show. We're good. No. He's an anointed one. Anointed for what? This is favor or power from God. If you want to say Most High, go ahead. For a specific task. And the kings would be anointed for their task, right? But the Messiah is going to be one upon whom the Spirit of the Lord comes and does not depart. He stays permanently with him. This is different. So a few things. Number one is these texts aren't about Onias. So I'm not calling him the anointed one. First of all, I don't think they refer to him at all. Number one, you understand? Number two, you could call someone an anointed one without being the Messiah. You got to look up the Cyrus example. Look up the Cyrus. It's very important because you understand they're not saying he's the Messiah, but he is certainly an anointed one in the text. I mean, it's really a done deal, isn't it? I think it is. So these critical scholars that hold to this, you got to understand, they believe Daniel is written around 165 BC. So this would make Daniel 9:25, 26 to them essentially a pseudo-prophecy about current events and then being fallaciously placed in the words of the angel Gabriel. Now, let's ask another question. Did Onias III accomplish the soteriological predictions of Daniel? If you want to use a different word there, you could. But basically, Daniel foretold, when you read it, about the making of atonement and the taking away of sin. This is what the text says. Wouldn't a duly ordained high priest need to perform these actions in the temple? Meaning, if Onias III was going to be the person to do this, he would have to do this in the temple, wouldn't he? But I'm going to show you why that's a problem for him to do this. And this is kind of a loose interpretation to think of a high priest who really removes sin in a permanent way. This is why it's got to be the Messiah. Daniel 9 prophecy lays out the following things to happen. He's got to finish the transgression. He's got to make an end of sins. He's got to have reconciliation for iniquity. He's got to bring in an everlasting righteousness. He's got to seal up the vision and prophecy. He's got to anoint the most holy. Now, look, this section of scripture, it's hotly contested for sure. And exploring some of the details in greater detail, go outside of the scope of this session, this post. But there's a few more things to say about Onias III in fulfillment with Daniel 9:24. Here's a short version. It's highly unlikely at this point. I'll be nice and say it's not impossible, but it's definitely low probability. Here's why. Onias III did not make atonement. He did not take away sin. He did not bring everlasting righteousness in. These are the things that are required for this person to do when you read the larger context. When he was killed, this is very key what I'm about to read here. Okay, you guys ready? This is very important. When Onias III was killed, there was no stoppage of the temple service. Antiochus looted the temple in 170 BC, but the abolition of the sacrifice didn't start until 167 BC. Basically, Onias III was high priest before Antiochus' desecration of the temple. So first of all, he's not restoring anything because the desecration of the temple by Antiochus happened after Onias III's death. Understand that? And Antiochus doesn't stop what's happening in the temple because he doesn't destroy it like the prophecy demands. He simply desecrates it. So we all know who it's really about. This guy. Basically, Onias III wasn't around to make an atonement for the temple, restore true Yahweh worship, provide the Torah. He didn't play any role in the restoration of the temple. Instead, he was murdered as a fugitive outside of the city near a heathen sanctuary to a false god, Daphne. That's Onias III. What happened to him? His ministry had ended before the events of Daniel 9:24 even unfolded. And with that, honestly, it's a wrap. Now, I got some people that want to come on. I'm going to drop the link up in the live chat. And this is first to Judah. You get first dibs, Judah. All right. Or if you're a Torah Knight, okay, you are the people. I only have a limited amount of slots. There is the link. All right. We got the link up. Now, while we're waiting on that, I'm going to play a little bit of the video. And I want you guys to come in.
We're continuing our journey through Daniel chapter 11, and in this video, we'll be covering verses 22 to 23. Let's give these three verses a complete read-through as they serve to introduce Antiochus IV. Quote, "In his place shall rise a contemptible person, on whom royal majesty had not been conferred. He shall come in without warning, and obtain the kingdom through intrigue. Armies shall be utterly swept away and broken before him, and the prince of the covenant as well. And after an alliance is made with him, he shall act deceitfully quickly and become strong with a small party, end quote, way and broken before him. About this, Newsom writes in her commentary, quote, although the reference in verse 22 to armed forces being swept away suggests military action, there is no other evidence to suggest that Antiochus fought his way to the kingship.
All right, Judah, just a second. I'll bring you on. I see you're here first. Tell your guys, though, they are also allowed to be on. If you want them to come on, they're also invited to talk, to have a discussion here as we wrap this up. But it's good you're first in here. I've got you up. You've muted yourself. If you could unmute yourself and all that. You got volume there? Oh, there you go.
Yes, yeah. Oh, wait. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, you're good. Okay, so I got you now, and when the other, if anybody of your guys come in, I'll bring them on. But all right, yeah, do you want to say anything? You want to say anything about tonight?
It was a good presentation. Even my wife is, you probably don't see her. My wife is in the chat. She's Jude Panamera. She's saying, great presentation. And, she has a lot of respect for you for, being brave enough to even tackle this subject, because the dying movement of the Hebrew Israelites, they would never, ever even bring this out. They would want to keep something like this a secret. I just want to address a certain thing about the word Nagayad, or which they would say Nagid. Because we didn't have a king at that time, and Onias was the temporal ruler, right? Because remember, Greece was still over, they were still over the Judeans, right? So we didn't have a king. So I'm going to use the word Nagid, modern Hebrew. This word is usually applied to Saul, is applied to King David, to certain like treasurers of the temple. And since Onias III was the maintainer of the covenant, he's called, Nagid Barith, the prince of the covenant. But it also means like an official, a ruler, a captain. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. Two, I'm not going to give away too much, but yes, Onias III did. By the way, just one correction. If you read before Onias III died, when he was alive, there were Levites under his administration that abandoned their functions and their posts to go practice Hellenism. So if you read the book of Ezekiel, remember, Onias III was the last Zadokite high priest. He was a Zadokite high priest from King David's high priest, Zadok, right? Until then. And then, remember, Onias is also in a 1,100 years unbroken line from Moses to him. So, and he died on Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. I don't know if you knew that. So he did atone for sin. He was the leader of the covenant. He maintained the covenant, as you pointed out. And it was a good, a very, very good presentation. The Hebrew Israelites in the chat, I see you guys there. You guys should definitely get back in the church, because you guys are perverting the Christian gospel. And me, as a Torah-keeping Israelite, being objective, you guys are doing that. Sorry.
All right, we got another gentleman here, Devon. Just give me a second. I've got an old template up because I didn't know how many guests we would have. So if you guys just give me one little second here to put up the other people there, and then I'll change the names while you guys are talking, because I know who Judah is. Everybody should understand Judah and I are debating tomorrow night. I think it's going to be a great debate. It's on Marlon Wilson's Gospel Truth channel, and I encourage everyone to come through, okay? And so this is like a preliminary thing where I'm discussing an issue that will be somewhat relevant. We may not really get too deep into tomorrow. And so here we are, and I think it's a good chance to have this discussion. Okay, if you could unmute yourself, Devon, and perhaps introduce yourself, and then I'll change these names here that I got.
Yeah, Shalom vocab, it's Davion, Torah Knights. I go by Brother Dayan, and Torah Knights Mafia. And I appreciate you allowing me on the panel and everything. So, I don't think I've ever actually got a chance to talk to you before, but
well, it's good. It's good to meet you, though. Good to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. But yeah, basically, I'm just gonna reiterate what Judah said. But basically, Onias III, basically all the high priests after Onias III were illegitimate. Even after the Maccabees, I don't know if it's gonna be part of our debate, so I ain't trying to get too much away. But the Maccabees, they ended up actually falling away to Hellenism. They started following the Greek customs, right? And some of them was actually set up by Greeks. And then after that, you got Caiaphas, Alcimus. They were set up by Greeks and Romans, right? So also by the time of 70 AD, remember, it was a lot of Gentiles in the land, a lot of foreigners. Israel was pretty much already exiled before then, right? Because Herod was the king during that time, and he was under Rome. So a lot of Israel was already exiled by then. But Antiochus did come into the city. He destroyed houses. He destroyed the sanctuary. He set up the abomination of desolation.
Well, can I ask a question real quick? If he destroyed the sanctuary, how did he set up an abomination of desolation inside of it if it's destroyed?
Well, that's what it is. It's desecrated. So, the temple.
That's different than destroyed, right? It's different than destroyed, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if you put an idol in the temple, then it's technically desecrated.
Yeah, but it's not destroyed because the Daniel 9 says it's got to be destroyed, right?
Yeah, but that's what it is. The abomination of desolation. Set up an altar to Zeus, right? The temple is supposed to be a place of Yahweh's glory, not a temple to Zeus.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. That's why every time I did it, I went like this, Zeus. Like he's an evil demon basically. But General Titus in 70 AD, he did destroy the temple. The Roman soldiers did destroy it. Not one stone was left standing. In fact, the Western Wall today is not the Western Wall of the temple. Some people sometimes think it is. It's actually an outer barrier that's not actually a temple wall. There is no temple wall left. My point by saying that is General Titus literally destroyed it. Antiochus didn't destroy it. He just desecrated it. I'm not saying it's good what he did. I'm just saying, for me, when I read it, I'm like, how does he meet the qualifications of this, Antiochus? Because he didn't destroy it. In fact, he did sacrifices in it afterwards, right? So he didn't destroy it. He's using it,
Well, yeah, but he was using it for his Greek Olympian gods.
Yeah, but it wasn't destroyed.
Like I said, after that, the high priests after Onias III were illegitimate. Right? Like I said,
I brought that out. The one guy was a Benjamite. He wasn't even the right tribe. Correct. You're right about that. Yes.
Yeah. And right. But the thing was, Jason was trying to usurp the priesthood from Onias, and Menelaus actually tried to usurp it from Jason, but neither one of them actually got the priesthood. So
they were established as high priests. I mean, remember, Onias III is in exile. So someone is functioning as a high priest in the time when he's in exile. I'm not saying he was legitimate, but with Jason, since it's his brother, we can't make the argument that he's of the wrong lineage. So clearly he's not of the wrong lineage. He may be illegitimate because the high priest hadn't died yet, of course, right? It's not supposed to happen until the high priest dies. But he is of the right lineage, and he is functioning as high priest while the other guy's in exile. Onias III's in exile,
Yeah. But remember, the high priest was always anointed, right? And the oil is poured upon his head. The high priest is exalted above his brethren. He usurped it from Onias III. When it said if I'm not mistaken, I think it's First Maccabees. It said all the laws were kept because the goodliness of Onias.
Yeah,
Onias III.
He is spoken well of, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But to me, when I see one person who actually destroyed the temple and one who didn't, I don't see how I can place these events on the timeline of Antiochus because he doesn't destroy the temple. To me, that's not the only argument, but to me, that's a massive hangup that there's no getting around, especially when there's a more clear candidate who does destroy the temple. It's met in a more literal way, in a manner of speaking, where he does destroy the temple. You know what I mean? But no, I understand. I understand because again, I try to bring out tonight that you guys aren't the only people who think this, and I don't think a lot of Christians are aware. If you pop open a commentary on Daniel 9 and Daniel 11, you may get a similar interpretation. Now, the idea of Onias III being the Messiah, that is much more rare to you gentlemen, I believe. But the Daniel 9 and Daniel 11 prophecies being supposed to be about Onias III, I don't know if a lot of Christians know, that is in the literature. So, no one's saying you're crazy or insane for thinking that. There are people who hold to that. Now, I think it's based upon bad presuppositions, but I understand the argument It has some things going for it, but I think ultimately when you add it all together, Titus fulfills it much better. Go ahead, Judah.
Oh, my bad. Oh, yes, you guys are not. Your eyes are not deceiving you. There are two Devions and Judah Nazareth on the. Yeah, we do look exactly alike. Yes.
Wait,
I don't know if you
what?
noticed that, okay. Look at me and Devion.
You guys don't look alike to me at all.
Oh, you're the first person to say that.
I don't know. Take off your hat.
If I had a hat on.
Nah, bro, you guys don't. I mean, maybe you could be cousins, I guess, but you guys don't look the same to me at all. But that's all right. If people think that, I guess.
Everyone says it.
Oh, they're all racist. Just kidding, man.
Yeah, you guys all look alike.
What you got, Judah? Go ahead and share what you got, brother.
Okay. So the word in the book of Daniel uses the word shakath, right, for the word for destroyed. I'm sorry. Where is it? I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm bringing it up. I'm listening. Go ahead.
All right. So this is from the Analytical Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon. This would be page 710. It says to be shakath. It means to be marred or spoiled by rotting, to be corrupted morally, to be laid waste, to destroy, to ruin, corrupt, to pervert, to corrupt, to be wicked, to act wickedly, to corrupt, to pervert one's ways, actions, to be corrupted, spoiled. So it doesn't necessarily imply that like it won't exist. It's kind of like what Devion was saying, that it would be morally perverted because they were doing their rituals in the temple.
So you're saying it would mean it like in a different way, essentially more along the lines of corrupted.
Yes, I would more.
Okay, yeah. I understand the argument. Can I ask you about this earlier in the passage in Daniel 9, starting in verse 24, where it says that there's going to be a finishing of transgression, an end to put to sin, an atoning for iniquity, and an everlasting righteousness brought in, and the vision and the prophet is going to be sealed, and there's going to be an anointing of the most holy place. See, that's another part of I have a challenge with seeing that as Onias III. He wasn't around to be able to do this after the desecration, and I don't see any way you could argue that he did this stuff.
So the book of Daniel, remember the angel told Daniel to change around to obscure the vision, right? So when you break it down into quote unquote Hebrew, you'll see that like the Daniel 9s are kind of like broken up and sometimes into little small fragments. So Onias III did bring in the righteousness for his generation. That's when we say he's the Messiah, we mean for that time period. Not like he's the Messiah for all time. He's the anointed ruler, Nagayad or Nagid, for that time. And since the temple sacrifices, were taken away because he was the last legitimate high priest, there was no more reconciliation for sin as far as the temple goes. So remember, his followers, when they moved out into the wilderness of Judea, they formed their community called the temple. And so since there were no more animal sacrifices, they were like prayer, baptism, and things like that, and study of the Torah are an atonement for the sins, because Onias III was no longer, he had already
at that time. Would you say that was the legitimate temple, the one that Onias III's son built? Would you say that was that's the legitimate temple?
No, definitely not. No.
So
because the backstory for anybody who knows, Onias IV. See, I think if I'm mistaken, there are two Onias IVs. There's Jason, who was not really an Onias; he was a usurper. Onias III had a son.
Yeah,
he went to Egypt. Yes. And built a temple there.
Correct.
And he tried to fulfill, the Isaiah 11 or 11:19. There should be 5 altars in Egypt that speak the language of Canaan.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about Isaiah 19. So he goes into the eastern side of the Nile Delta, I guess, in a place called Leontopolis. And he erects a temple there. It's 151 BC. And it's interesting. It stood for 220 years. And it's actually mentioned in the Talmud. Talmud Megillah 10a mentions this. R. Isaac, and that means Rabbi Isaac to the audience. Rabbi Isaac said, I have heard that sacrifices may be offered in the temple of Onias at the present day. So apparently they were doing it. Now, if you don't think it's the legitimate temple, does that mean at this time there was no legitimate sacrifices being offered at all?
Pretty much, yeah. After Onias III, it was over.
And remember, the temple was in Leontopolis, the temple was always in Jerusalem.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I would agree with that. But here's the thing. If that's the case, then in what way did Onias III complete the prophecy? Because he didn't finish transgression. He didn't put an end to sin. He didn't atone for iniquity. But those are things required of the person being spoken of in Daniel 9:24.
But he did, because he was the high priest. So he had God's anointing upon him, and the judgment plate of Israel on the Kashan, the breastplate. So him dying also on the day of getting executed, also on the day of atonement, he atoned for his generation, for those that that believe, that didn't fall away. The reason I say this is because in the book of Ezekiel, the Most High says, the priest of Zadok, they shall minister to me to fatten the blood, because when the other Levites went astray, the Zadokites stayed loyal to the Most High. And the Zadokites are who? Onias III's followers.
Okay, just a second. I'm changing screen, so it's going to be a little messy for a second. I'll fix the screen in a second, guys. Wait, oops, I hit the wrong button. Sorry, hold on. Here's what I wanted to show you I'll show the audience, and just it's going to be messy for a second, but I'm gonna get there. So on the screen is Daniel 9:24, and so I hear what you're saying, and I'm trying to track with it, Judah, but it you got to understand, these are the things said here are pretty big to me. They seem like a big, big deal. And so when you look at it, you see what it says. It says, finish the transgression. Do you think that could accurately be described of every high priest who's ever lived, that they finished the transgression?
No, that's why Onias III was the prince. He was he was the chosen one. The other high priests were good. Some of them were bad, but he was between him and Moses. Remember, Moses was the first. Onias is the last. So,
but in what way did he finish the transgression? Because they still had to offer sacrifices when the temple was sort of restored, and it's with the real high priest later on.
So this verse 24 here is talking about from the time that Darius gave the decree to go back and rebuild. So it's giving you like a little small summation. When you break it down, quote unquote, in the Hebrew, you're gonna see that it's very detailed, and it starts talking about even other things, like things that pertain to the future. But like you said, dual prophecy, but another point. But this 24 here is not literally talking also about literal numbers too. Like sometimes you have to go to the Torah and see what the 70 weeks stand for, which I can tell you, Leviticus 25, it stands for the land Sabbath. Usually when Israel got exiled, the land would have a Sabbath. And so it's saying, hey, okay, the land Sabbath is over. You guys can return back. They returned back under Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest, Ezra, during that time. And from Joshua the high priest until Onias III, that Zadokite righteous priesthood, that branch or the shoot of righteousness, was established in the land.
Okay, but if they finished transgression, why would there still be sacrifices offered after he was dead? I'm saying, I don't mean immediately after, because we understand there was like illegitimate stuff, but I'm saying when things were sort of restored to their rightful place, where you had actual Levites and things like that, instead of just people who bought it, they still had to do that stuff because it didn't finish transgression. It didn't put an end to sin. You could say atone for iniquity, but the way this prophecy indicates is like after the temple's desecrated, for example, he's not able to any longer atone for iniquity, And here's the big one: bring in everlasting righteousness. How would you say Onias III fulfilled that?
Onias III's followers are called the righteous ones, and they were a priesthood that they were get the Dead Sea Scrolls from, and from there, like we're saying, for that those people under his administration, under his time, were atoned for. You know what I'm saying? We're not saying like everybody became righteous. I don't think that's what it's saying here. It's saying like, this guy, when he, until the end of the Zadokite line, those who are inscribed in the book of life are inscribed in the book of life for righteousness, but those who are not. That's why Ezekiel, when it says, the Zadokites shall offer me the fat and the blood, because when Levi strayed, as Brother Devion pointed out, the Maccabees, though, yeah, they were Levites, but they were not legitimate. Matter of fact, the Zadokites, or Qumran Israelites, they were opposed to the Maccabees because they're like, you guys are usurpers as well. So they didn't acknowledge the Maccabees as legitimate. They were not saying necessarily enemies, but they were like, yo, you guys are usurpers as well.
I'm still not understanding how they brought in everlasting righteousness. Now, regardless of that, what's the evidence, or why do you think that they're where do you get the idea that Onias III had followers who were called that, and that has something to do with Qumran?
You want to answer, Devion? Or?
Well, like you said, the Zadokites who didn't stray, when the rest of Israel strayed, Zadok means righteous. That's what or you know what I'm saying, the righteous ones. And the Qumran community were Zadokites who separated themselves when Israel wanted to follow Hellenism. That's why they went to the desert.
Right? Yeah, and I brought some of that up, but how do you know that he's associated with that community?
Many times throughout the Dead Sea Scrolls, he's called the teacher of righteousness, where it says the wicked priest against the teacher of righteousness. The wicked priest, well, you can either put Jason or Menelaus, because they both wanted to usurp the high priesthood, right? And it said that Onias III wasn't killed for himself, which means not for whatever he did, right? Or not for his own sin, but because of the usurpers. And he's also called the instructor or the interpreter.
Where does any text say that Onias III was not killed for himself, but killed for the sins of others?
It never said that he was killed for the sins of others, but the high priest, he was a high priest, and he wears the breastplate and the shoham stones with all the names of Israel. So the high priest is a representative of Israel. He's the only one that enters the Holy of Holies to atone for Israel's sins.
Well, yeah, no doubt about that. But you said he was killed for the sins of others.
No, I said he wasn't. I said he wasn't killed for himself, not for his own sin. I never said he died for others.
You're just saying his death was unjust? Is that all you're saying?
Yeah. That's why the outcry in Israel was great, and even Antiochus was sad for Onias' death.
Because, yeah, we agree on that. Right. That's true. What about this? Because so far, you got to understand, regardless of the 70 weeks, because I wasn't trying to, do a whole thing with that. Like, we can put the dating sort of on a side and kind of look at these requirements given for this person to finish the transition, to put an end to sin, atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness. I don't see how he meets any of those. I think the only one you could argue for is just as a general high priest, they atone for iniquity. But when you put it all together, it doesn't meet the qualifications. What about this? To seal both vision and prophet. Doesn't that seem to indicate an end of time type situation? Like where there's the beginning of a stage, it's like has a finality to it. I guess what I'm saying is, how do you guys take to seal both vision and prophet in relationship to Onias III? How do you interpret that?
So when the angel was talking to Daniel, he was basically given a time for the Greek thing. This is where you go into Daniel 11, where you were showing about the Prince of the Covenant.
Yeah.
Right. When you start going down to everybody that he's listing down, they're all like Seleucids and Ptolemies. It doesn't really go into like any other time period. He wasn't shown the time period of Rome. Perhaps, probably, in my opinion, which I'm not going to teach this doctrine because Scripture doesn't say this, but in my opinion, because of Onias III being the last legitimate Zadokite high priest, God's not even looking at the temple anymore. That's why they called it Herod's temple, and you begin to see non-Israelites kind of creeping in. I'll give you another example. Especially during the New Testament times, Ananias and Caiaphas and them, they were appointed by Rome, which is, according to Torah, is a strict no-no. Foreign power cannot put a high priest in to rule over and have God recognize the temple service. So, if you go by the Torah, God wasn't even recognizing the temple service when it was, as far as the, Gentiles ruling and Rome appointing false high priest. And even in the New Testament, you guys have, when you go into in the Hebrew New Testament, which, is a good argument. You can say, well, doesn't say that in the Greek. I get it. Good argument, counter argument. But when you hear like certain brothers, Hebrew Israelites, they say chief priest. When you go into the quote unquote Hebrew New Testament, it literally makes it seem like there were multiple high priests during Jesus' day, like living at the same time. Which, you know, according to the Torah, there's only one high priest, and the rest are, you know, you got.
Well, yeah, the situation with Annas and Caiaphas, you know, it was complicated where you had them kind of switch out, and then one was kind of running the show, even though he wasn't technically in charge. To me, that's my understanding is attested to, you know, even in outside sources. And to me, that's what the New Testament is relaying. Not that there's literally more than one per se. But when I see to seal both vision and prophet, to me, there's like some element that we're getting kind of close to an in situation, is the way it sounds. But I could see another way a person might be able to argue for it. What about to anoint a most holy place? How would you say Onias III fulfilled that?
I wouldn't say Onias III did that. I would put that back to. So this is Israel going back into the land, right? After the exile. So Zerubbabel and Joshua the high priest were, you know, in charge of the building, you know, of the temple, or the reconstruction of the temple. So then the most holy would have to be anointed because he was the high priest, Joshua the high priest, but not necessarily Onias III.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you read was it 25? It said to build Jerusalem. It said to return and build Jerusalem until the anointment of the prince. So it said to rebuild, right? That would be after, you know, we were exiled. Like you said, Zerubbabel and Joshua. You know, Zerubbabel was the governor, Joshua was the high priest during that time, and they anointed the Holy of Holies, the altar, you know, and everything within it.
Okay. Just so when I look at this, you got to understand, this sounds like Jesus fulfilling this to us. Finished transgression, put an end to sin, atone for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness. He inaugurates it at the cross. It's not finished or completed. That's not the teaching of the New Testament, but it's inaugurated and will be consummated at his second advent. Seal both vision and prophet, anoint a most holy place. It's like, okay, this really sounds messianic. Now, when you go to this section, how is it that you would say Onias III is the anointed one who was cut off and had nothing? Because how did he have nothing when his son built a temple later on? Even though it was in Egypt, that doesn't sound like nothing.
Oh, do you want that, Devian? Or because, well, the word "ein law" means not for himself.
Yeah, that's what it says. I was going to ask if you're familiar with the, I'm going to say quote unquote Hebrew, if you was familiar with the Hebrew, because well, you know, we read the Torah, the Strongs, right? And then it says, then after the 62 septets, the anointed one will be cut off and will exist no longer. The people of the prince will come and will destroy the city and the sanctuary, but his end will be to be swept away as in a flood. But in the language where it says he cut off, it says, I can just show it. It says, let me know. You probably can't see it.
Yikaret?
I'm sorry?
Yikaret?
I'm sorry?
Well, I'm just saying where it says cut, it's Yikaret, which means to be ended. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it says Yakaroth, which is like he cut off. Mashayak, which is the anointed one. Wa Ain, which is and not or no law, which means for him, or like for himself. So it's basically saying he wasn't cut off for himself. When it's not for himself, which means not for his own sin. It was unjust.
Huh. You know, be interesting is to see other uses of that word. So here's some other uses of that word. All right. Translates in the AV as except, faileth, fatherless, incurable, infinite, innumerable, neither, never, no, none, not, nothing, not, and without. Nothing, not, nothing. Okay. Without, lack of. Those are the other ways it's translated. So it's hard for me to see how that means he's dying not for his own sin.
Well,
It just it seems to be saying he's dying with nothing.
Go to the next word. What does law, which is a law and a walk, law, which means to or for him. You know, he wasn't cut off for himself.
Wait, you're saying because of what?
No, in the verse.
Oh, you're okay. Yeah. Okay.
In the quote unquote Hebrew, it says wa ayin law, which means not for himself. Ayin just means like no or not or nothing or to be without, you know?
Yeah, but it's he shall have nothing. It's not.
Yeah, it says Yakarath, which means and he cut off or to be cut off. The Ya at the beginning would symbolize he.
Yeah, but I don't see how that's saying he didn't die for his own sins.
Okay, that's a horrible translation you have here. Which version?
Well, that's the ESV, but here, let's look at some other translations. What do you guys prefer here?
I mean, we use the quote-unquote Hebrew, but I mean, all English translations. I mean, go to KJV. It should be like for himself.
Sure. Yeah, but that still wouldn't necessarily mean that it's saying that he's dying for someone else's sins.
I never said he was dying for anyone else's
Well, you're
sins.
saying not for his own, so then he's who?
Yeah, which means he died unjustly, but not for anybody else.
So he's you're saying it says cut off first, but then on account of not for his own sin after. The order
he wasn't
seems
cut
odd.
off for his own. He wasn't cut off for himself, which means not on his own doing, or his own accord. He was killed unjustly. Like I said, all the inhabitants of Israel at that time, or Jerusalem, they were saddened by his death.
Yeah, I brought that up.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, so when you look at the Daniel 9, though, the problem for me is it just doesn't. I don't see how Onias fulfills any of these, you know, and then also how Antiochus fulfills the idea of destroying it, you know. So I'm trying to understand what you're saying, you know, because after that it says its end shall come with a flood, and to the end there shall be war. I mean, that would work with Titus to me much better than Antiochus, you know.
Well, Antiochus, if I'm not mistaken, he was killed by a sickness. He was killed. He wasn't killed in like war or anything. He was like just swept away. But I wanted to read this real quick. This is First Maccabees 20. This is about Antiochus the fourth. It says, after subduing Egypt, Antiochus returned in the 143rd year. He went up against Israel and came to Jerusalem with a strong force. Right? He arrogantly entered the sanctuary and took the golden altar, the lampstand for the light, and all its utensils. He also took the table, right, for the bread of the presence, the cups for drink offerings, the bowls, the golden censers, the curtain, the crowns, the golden decorations on the front of the temple. He stripped it all off. He took the silver and the gold and the costly vessels. He also took the hidden treasures that he found, taking them and returning to his own land. Right? Now, right? He said he took them to his own land, right? Which would make the temple desecrated. And, right, I'm going to continue. And I just wanted to make a point. It says, 2 years later, the king sent to the cities of Judah a chief collector of tribute, and he came to Jerusalem with a large force. Deceitfully, he spoke peaceable words to them, and they believed him. But he suddenly fell upon the city, dealt it a severe blow, and destroyed many people of Israel. He plundered the city, burned it with fire, and tore down its houses and its surrounding walls. Right? Now, I know you made the case that it was Titus, but it said he took the vessels of the temple to his own land. The picture you pulled up was the Romans taking the vessels of the temple to Rome. And there's all type of triumphant arcs with that carving around it all around the world. Right? So, I mean, you making the case that it's Titus, but we making the case that it's Antiochus IV who destroyed the city and the sanctuary.
That'd be a good argument, but he didn't destroy it. I mean, Judah is saying he translated as corrupted, but that's different because it didn't saying he destroyed, you know. But all right, well, do you guys have anything else? Because, I mean, it's about 2 hours. I don't tend to do 11-hour shows.
No, I hear you. Hey, Listen. We have a debate, you guys, tomorrow. I'm about to hop on my notes right now. It's my Shabbat. It's not work, you guys, but I'm about to get ready for the debate tomorrow for between me and Vocab for Isaiah 53. Also, too, I want to thank Vocab Malone for bringing up the Torah Nights. You're definitely cooking this year. You know what I mean? You have some major wins. Vocab, please don't go down in debating certain guys that are not of rank. There are certain people that are just there to clout chase. Vocab was on our channel the other night, and people who they rarely hit the panel. They saw Vocab over there, and all of a sudden here they come trying to like talk and set up debates with them or whatever. And which is fine. You know, we have a community channel. It's all good. But I'm looking at Vocab and I'm like, Vocab is like, okay, I'll accept that debate. Okay, I'm like, Vocab, bro, your stock and rank is a lot higher now. There's certain people you're just gonna have to ignore because they're trying to get clout. This is just all that is. You know, they see you over there, they see you on Torah nights. You got some Hebrew Israelites watching too. And now they make response videos, but they're not gonna do like you do. So we commend you with that. Before I shut up too, one more thing. We know that there's tons of Christians out there. Torah Nights is also a team. We're not a camp. We're just a group of believers. We have New Testament people too. And there are lots of Christians. And since the Hebrew Israelites, we don't beat them under the table into a fetal position. If there's any Christians that would like to have a team debate on this, it could be led by Vocab Malone, a team debate versus Torah Nights on this Daniel 9, Onias versus Jesus Christ. That would be a great thing. I think people would love to see it. And it would further prove that the Hebrew Israelites need to get back in the church under you and stop perverting the Christian gospel. Go ahead, Devion.
Hey, real quick, I heard, speaking of New Testament, I heard that you were becoming a little more favorable towards the book of Mark. Is that true?
Yeah. Mark, was it Mark 12?
Mm-hmm.
Just one,
Mark
just
12.
one chapter, you're saying, or what?
It's my favorite chapter in the New Testament.
But are you saying that's your only chapter you accept, or?
No, I'm saying, but like when people say, are you to come to Jesus Christ? I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna listen to him and teach Mark 12, which these guys have a problem with listening to. So I'm like, I'm following Jesus Christ more than these Hebrew Israelites who claim to be following him.
All
right. Well, anything else, Davion?
Oh yeah, no, I just want to say I appreciate it, Vocab, having Torah Nights on, having us on, and
yes, sir, I appreciate it too. And
yeah, no problem. And hey, hopefully we get more debates going. I'm definitely gonna be tuned in tomorrow for y'all debate. So
yeah, look at tomorrow. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you fine. I was just gonna say, make sure I click the like button and subscribe, because Vocab. I'm just saying, I haven't seen any other Israelite group, camp, or whatever talk about Onias III. Now watch. If they do, that's because Vocab Malone did it. That's because he did it.
Facts.
No, I'm just saying.
That'd have to be Hakah. Hakah's the number one Israelite to copy what I do. You know, we use the word narcigesis. Hakah runs around saying narcigesis. We there's like, I use the word stratification to specifically when a deacon with Hassad, I turn on his channel, he's talking about stratification, like in relationship to biblical text. Every time I'm like, bro, it's not just one time, it's multiple times. I'm like, you're using the same thing. Oh man. Anyways, and there's a longer.
They need to get back in church, deacon. Since you're a deacon, you need to get back in the church. I know the New Testament. I know what Paul says about the body of Christ and the members. You guys say you're members of the body of Christ, but why are you guys have a new Jesus that you made in 1969, and you're perverting the Christian gospel while acting like you're not Christians. So if you're going to be a Christian, be a true Christian. Vocab Malone's unapologetic in his Christianity. You guys are trying to straddle the fence. So, but thank you, Vocab, for having us on, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I look at tomorrow almost like, two people having a Bible study in public with giving different views of the passage, and then the audience can benefit from the discussion, Yeah,
so. Definitely. Listen, you're cooking this year. This is the Vocab's year. As far as the Christians go, you other Christians need to follow suit and do what he's doing. Listen, Vocab, we're not trying to toot your horn. We're saying we know. Listen, there are people who were, when we were on another guy's channel that was pretty big. You know who I'm talking about? The Egypto Pan-Africanist foolishness. People were paying Somnitter to, I'm sorry, they were paying somebody to not debate Torah nights. So that means somebody's kids were going hungry to avoid getting in the ring. So when you stand up and are brave enough, and we're looking at the Hebrew Israelites, like, wait a minute, why is this Christian brave enough to stand up against us, but you guys are afraid? So we're commending your bravery. Other Christians, y'all need to stand up like Vocab Malone and defend the Christian doctrine.
Well, I appreciate that. I look forward to it, guys. Check out the debate tomorrow. I'm going to drop the link there. Check out the article, Gospel Truth, tomorrow. Marlon Wilson, me, Judah Natzera. And thanks for coming on, Davion. God bless y'all. God bless. Have a good one. All right, y'all. Peace out. Got to go. See you tomorrow.